Well, welcome to the third edition of Postie's Pointers. 2 years ago I had quite a good year, last year not so good. Hopefully, third time lucky, that will do a bit better again this year. Anyway, it's a bit of fun, I hope you enjoy it. I haven't got so much time this year, so I'm going to try and blast through the 4 days, one day after another, and I hope everybody has a bit of luck. Right, if we can just start with race 1, the Supreme Novice Hurdle, the first race at Cheltenham on the Tuesday. Just running through the horses quickly. Facile Vega, it done nothing wrong. It won all its races except for last time. Last time it was took on for the lead with an ex-flat horse that went exceptionally fast pace. It dropped out in the later stages. People said it should have stayed on a little bit when the ex-flat horse fell late on. It should have still stayed on, it shouldn't have dropped so far back. My opinion is, give it another chance. It was short price favourite for the race before. It ran that disappointing race. I think the horse will learn from that. The jockey will ride it with a bit more restraint this time, and I expect Facile Vega to win the race again. Anybody backing the horse, it's a lot bigger price they'll get for it, with it having a disappointing run last time, so at least that's increased the odds. The opposition it's up against, Ilete Tomps from the same stable. It hasn't done much wrong itself, improving horse, it'll run a big race. Marine National from the O'Connell yard, the trainer's been shouting about this horse all the time, expecting it to win the race. It'll be thereabouts as well. In the pocket, 4th favourite, Rachel Blackmore up for Henry de Bromhead. It was going to step up to 2.5 mile. They've stepped it back to 2 mile, possibly with the going changing to soft going, that it'll need a bit of a steer, although this is over the minimum trip. Stamina should come into play here. The English horse, Tamirus, it's won its last 3. It's got stamina. Whether it's quite good enough, I'm not sure. So my tip for the race, Facile Vega. The second race, let's have a look. The second race, the Arkle, is a very quick race, 2 mile race, just short of 2 mile actually. Very quick race for a chase race. It's on an undulating track, it'll be very fast. You've got horses like El Fabiolo, joint favourite with John Bonn. They're both expected to fight the finish out. El Fabiolo ran Nyland last time and ran a blinder to win a very competitive 2 mile chase. The Irish expecting that it'll go in. John Bonn, the best of the English horses. It hasn't done much wrong. It would have probably been favourite still if it hadn't been for its last run, which was just a 2-horse race. Skelton's horse, he injected a bit of pace on that horse, the jockey, and it almost seemed to catch John Bonn asleep. John Bonn had to get the hurry up, which it's not used to being. It's been winning its races easily. It's not used to be busted along for a few strides. It got back in contention and won in the end going away, which it should have. It would have been expected to do that. But that's why it's possibly a little bit bigger price than you would expect. Dysart Dynamo from the Mullins yard. It's a very headstrong horse. It's hard to get the horse to settle. It's one of them horses where you've nearly got to let it get on with what it wants to do. You can't restrain it much. But it's a horse at the price, it's about 5 to 1, where I'm going to take a chance on over this fast 2 mile course that the jumping might get the likes of El Fabiolo a little bit out of its stride, where it's apt to make the odd mistake. So I wouldn't be backing it at 6 to 4. John Bonn, marvellous jumper, doesn't make mistakes, but at a real fast pace what Dysart Dynamo will set, it could catch them out a little bit, and I'm hoping that it gets away from them a little bit. The only problem with backing Dysart Dynamo is there's a couple of horses what I don't expect to win, but might go on in front, might challenge Dysart Dynamo for the lead, which isn't ideal. The likes of Effenock Fox, Effenock Fizz, and also Strofan Jack. But I'm hoping for the best, and at the price, Dysart Dynamo. The third race, the Ultima Handicap. Now this is a real horse for steers. The favourite, Correct Rambler, come from a long way back to win this race last year from Lucinda Russell's yard. They say the horse is in great nick and expecting a massive run from it again. Into Overdrive, the second favourite. That's another horse from the north, from Walford's yard. It's done nothing but improve. It's been run against good horses, but it's been getting a lot of weight from them. It's went up in the handicap its last two runs, and it's jumped up again quite a bit in this race. But it's an improving horse, and it's the one I'll be backing, Into Overdrive. It seems to fight on its races. It seems to stay very well, and it's improving. Other horses in the race, Monbeg Genius from John Joe O'Neill's yard. He's very adept at having staying chasers in his yard, and he seems to get that type of horse in what really does really well in staying chasers. That's Monbeg Genius, the third favourite. I wouldn't put anybody off backing it, but not for me. Fast or Slow from an Irish yard. It's been touted as well fancied in the race. Nasalam from George Moore's yard. They're expecting a big run from that. At 8-1, I think it'll get in a place. There's others in the race what have chances, but you could go on forever with it. So I'll leave it at that. The next race, the Champion Hurdle, quick 2 mile race for the best and quickest hurdlers in the business. The favourite, which will be about 3-1 on, Constitution Hill from the Nicky Henderson yard. It hasn't done anything wrong. It's been beaten previous Champion Hurdle winners from its own stable, and I expect it to win probably unchallenged. There is better opposition than it's had in the past with State Man, top Irish horse, and it's expected to give it a run for its money. I can't see it. I think Constitution Hill will win again, and it'll be a horse what's talked about well into the future. For anybody who's trying to back something with a bit of value in the race, I wouldn't be taking the favourite on, although it's an impossible price to back a 3-1 on. But what I would do possibly, I would take a chance at another English horse. I like to move it from Twiston Davies' yard. I would take it to be second to Constitution Hill, and I like to move it to about 18-1, and I think that's worth taking a chance in the forecast with the favourite. The next race, the Mares Hurdle race, is an absolute fascinating race. You've got horses in here, Honeysuckle, who most people involved in horse racing will know. It's won the last 2 Champion Hurdles. It went numerous races without a defeat. It's getting a bit older. It's now 9. It come unstuck a little bit this year. It's lost its 2 races this year. But it's entitled to. It's a year older. It's run against decent horses. It hasn't been well beat. It's been in contention. But rather than, it's going to be its last race, and rather than put it in the Champion Hurdle up against the likes of Constitution Hill, pardon me, they've decided to put it in the Mares Hurdle, which it's previously won, and it'll be a big player. The only problem is you've got horses in there. You've got Epatante, which is another previous champion hurdle winner from the Nicky Henderson yard. You've got Maria's Rock from Nicky Henderson's yard, and it's done nothing but improve over the last couple of seasons. Going back 2 seasons ago, Henderson talked about Maria's Rock being a champion hurdle horse, and he had high hopes for it. Then it seemed that things didn't go right for it, possibly niggles, bits of injuries, but it come back to form last season and this season, and it just looks like a horse will kind of do much wrong. Henderson did look to put it in the Stayers hurdle because it's got plenty stamina in its pedigree, and that would be over 3 mile rather than run it over this 2 mile. He might also have thought, well, they'll split up Maria's Rock and Epatante, which are from the same stable, and leave Epatante to do its best in the race, which is it's thought to run a big race by Henderson. It's been run well this season as well. It's only been beat by the likes of Constitution Hill. Unfortunately, I think it's been the owners have said, well, they want to see Maria's Rock in the Mares hurdle race. The reason being, I would imagine, this is over 2.5 mile. Maria's Rock's got plenty of stamina, but with the ground now turning to soft, stamina will really come into play, and Maria's Rock could be doing its best work at the end of the race. Honeysuckle on the softer ground, stretching it over 2.5 mile, stamina might become an issue, although it has won over 2.5 mile. But 2.5 mile on soft ground, a year older, bit unfortunate, but I think its bubble might get burst where they wanted to go out with a win, and I think Maria's Rock could be the one. Epatante is sure to run a big race. It'll not go down easily. Brandy Love is a horse I backed anti-post for the race. It doesn't always run straight in its races, but I think Cheltenham will be better for it. The ground will not be an issue. It hasn't had a lot of racing, and I'm hoping, because I've backed Brandy Love anti-post, I'm hoping it wins. But my choice, looking the way the race has settled down now, would be Maria's Rock. The next race, the Boodles Juvenile Handicap Hurdle. A tricky race. The favourite, Takeo, from Mullins Yard. I'll have every chance, but it's not the one for me. Biker, I say it's a great big horse, Biker. It's an improving young horse, and I think it's got every chance. Biker will not be far off. Another horse from the Ben Pauling, from the English Yard, Ben Pauling with Rachel Blackmore, he's got up. This has been well touted, this horse, bad. And if this was to go in, you can imagine what music they'll be playing after it's won. Another one with a big chance. There's others in the race, I could name a few. What's got a chance, it's hard to sort out. But at a big price, Samuel Spade from Ben Pauling's Yard again. It's about 20 to 1 shot. I think it's got an each way chance with the places, extra places in the race. Perseus Way, it's 12 to 1. It's got place chances. But in a competitive race, Biker would be the one for me. The last race, I'm looking at, this is a national hunt, just over 3.5 mile chase for real Stayers. The favourite, Galliard du Mesnil from Mullins Yard. I backed this one anti-post. It's now round about even money favourite. The jockey Mullins' son he's been saying it should go in this race and not other races it's been entered for, because he'll get the ride in this race and he's expecting a massive run. This will take all the beating. Allegorie De Vassey. In the same race you've got Chemical Energy with Jamie Codd, the top amateur. He had a choice between Chemical Energy from the Elliott's Yard and Manila Crooner. They're both about 6-7 to 1. He's picked Chemical Energy from the two, so you can look at that which way you want. Chemical Energy would probably like ground a bit better than this, so that would put me off that being a big challenge to the favourite. Manila Crooner, not for me. The fourth favourite, Marla Mission. This is a horse I followed this season and last season. Last season it ran at Sedgefield, of all places, my local track, in a hurdle race, and I remember at the time the trainer saying, O'Connell, who's a very shrewd trainer, saying this horse will improve when stepped up in distance, and it'll improve even more when it goes chasing. He's been true to his word, and that's what's happened with this. It did have the odd blip, but it's back to form last time. It's jumping, it's a lot more assured now. It stays very well. If somebody wanted to back a one to be second to the favourite in the forecast, to Allegorie De Vassey, I would take Marla Mission to be second. Or if somebody wanted to back a one each way for a little bit of value, I would take Marla Mission at about 78 to 1 each way. Right, that concludes the first day's racing. If I can just see which is the horse I would put me nap on in the meeting, I'll just have a quick look there. And I think, although I fancy the last favourite at even money, I'm not wanting to nap at something as short as that. I think I'll go with Maria's Rock, which I think will stay the 2.5 mile trip well. I don't think the going will be a problem to it, and I think it's got Henderson's jockey on, the top jockey, de Bonville, and I'm expecting that to go in. That's Maria's Rock. Day 2 of the Cheltenham Festival, the Wednesday, and we'll start the first race with the Ballymore Novice Hurdle at 1:30. Quickly run through some of the fancied horses and what I will be selecting for the race. The long time favourite Hermes Allen from Nichols Yard has done nothing wrong all season. It's stayed really well. There's 2 mile 5 furlong distance, lots of stamina. It's now drifted out in the betting from favourite, but I think that's more to do with the amount of money on the Mullins horse and Pay a Pass, which has been well backed, well supported, well touted. It's 7 to 4. It's a horse what's improving, stays very well, done nothing wrong, and I expect it'll take all the beating, although it's now the 7 to 4 favourite. Hermes Allen is sure to run its race, not be far off, but it'll have its work cut out beating the Mullins horse a favourite and Pay a Pass. The third horse in the betting, Gaelic Warrior, is a horse I could spend an hour just talking about in its own right. It was well backed for a handicap last season. It veers out at times when it seems to be when it hits the front. It's a bit apt to run across the track a bit. It's a bit wayward. It runs out to its right, but it's a quality horse. I had backed it for the first race of the Cheltenham meeting on the Tuesday, the 2 mile race, and I had a good price for it, anti-post, 25 to 1. It was down to about 6 to 1 or 7 to 1, but he's decided to put it over this extra distance. And in all fairness, it's probably the right race for it. I know it's a bit disappointing for me to be pulled out of the 2 mile race. Sure to run a big race. The jockey will certainly work for his money because it does veer out to the right at times. The trainer states it's only really doing that when it gets in the clear. So it'll be covered up on the inside, hopefully horses around it to keep it inside without veering off. If it does hit the front, people who are backing it will have to hold their breath because it could veer across the track. It's known to do this when it gets under pressure or in the clear. The 4th favourite, Good Land. This trip will be ideal. Plenty of stamina. Run a big race as well. Wouldn't put anybody off this horse. It'll run a big race. The next one in the betting, Champ Kylie. It'll run a good race as well. The first 5 in the betting, I couldn't count any of these out. They'll all be up there. They'll all run big races. Champ Kylie started off the beginning of the season running really well. Then it had a disappointment, but there was reasons for that. Then it's come back to form. It'll run a big race. So the top 5 in the betting, which I've named, I'll take the favourite in Pay a Pass because the confidence in the stable behind it is massive, and that's been followed through in the betting. 7-4 is a bit short, but I'm not going to back a bigger priced horse when I expect it to win. The next race, the Brown Advisory Novice Chase, Grade 1 race over 3 mile. The favourite in the race, Jerry Colomb, has stepped up to 3 mile here, stays really well. I think it's still unbeaten, Jerry Colomb. It hasn't done anything wrong, jumps really well, worthy favourite for sure. Second favourite, Sir Gerhard. They did have it entered for different races. They weren't quite sure where to go with it. But they've put it in this race and there's been plenty of support coming in for it. So this will be Mullen's leading fancy for the race, Sir Gerhard. The third favourite, the Real Whacker. It's run its last 2 races and won them both. It's a horse what goes to the front and jumps exceptionally well. Loves its jumping, fairly flies along. It's whether in the latter stages that something's going to nail it later on for stamina. I've backed the Real Whacker, Andy Post, and I'm hoping for a big run with it. But it'll have to be exceptional to beat the favourite, Jerry Colomb. Another one close up in the betting, well, it's 8-1, Time Hill. I've also got a bit on that one, Andy Post. Now this horse is a horse I've followed for a couple of seasons, probably, Time Hill. It was a good hurdler. It was over 3 mile. It ran the stairs. It was over that distance. It was more or less just below top class, or it was round about top class. And when Richard Johnson hung up his boots and said he was calling it a day, in an interview a couple of seasons ago, this was a horse what he said he's more disappointed that he would miss when it went chasing, novice chasing. So I've kept that in my mind ever since. I followed it, but it didn't seem a natural jumper, novice chasing. And there's still quite a few people got doubts about it this year, chasing. It improved last time for sure. Time before didn't jump well. If it was to jump well in this race, it's got a lot of quality about it. and I think it'll run a big race. The distance will be ideal for it. It's just its jumping. It must be on its best mettle as far as its jumping concerned. If it is, it'll run a big race. The two I've took on to beat the favourite are the Real Whacker, Anti-Post, and Time Hill. So I'm hoping from 2 big runs from then. But they will have to be on the very best form to beat the favourite, Jerry Colomb. The next race, the Coral Handicap Hurdle, over almost 2 3/4 mile. This is a tricky race. I could name quite a few in with chances here. It'll be just little stakes, but for fun I will pick a couple of each way bets out. Because it's so open, the favourite's about 7 or 8 to 1. That tells you how competitive a handicap this is. The ones I'll be looking at to have a little each way bet on will be HMS Seahorse at 9 to 1, and I think the other one will be, let's have a look through them, Beacon Edge at 12 to 1. Small stakes, little bit each way. There's a couple there I think will run decent races for your money. The next race is the Queen Mother Champion Chase. These are for the quickest horses over 2 mile. Experienced chasers. They'll be going hell for that in this race. Untitled Chapter, a very quick horse, likes to be up front, likes to get on with it, jumps really well, shocked a few last time when it beat Energumene and Edward Stone. There's arguments can be put forward that Energumene, for whatever reason, didn't run its race. It did make a mistake early. That possibly was it. It might have affected its confidence in the race or whatever, but it didn't. It certainly didn't run its race. Considering it won the champion chase last year, it was a different horse the last run. Edward Stone, there's arguments being made for that. It only got beat on the line. It looked as if it was watching Energumene, or the jockey was watching Energumene too much in the race, concentrating on it as if it was only between them two. Untitled Chapter was jumping well in front and quick in front. It got away from them a little bit, and when Energumene didn't go on and looked like it was in trouble, the jockey of Edward Stone thought, I better go after this leader. Some would argue it was too late. He concentrated too much on Energumene rather than the front runner. He actually got up to it and I think stuck its head in front of Untitled Chapter, not far from the line, but Untitled Chapter fought and got its head back in front. I think really Edward Stone's one of my favourites, and I think it was a case of it took that much out of it, how much running it had to put in late on just to get up to Untitled Chapter, that there was nothing left when it challenged. So Edward Stone would be the one for me, but it would be a very good race to watch this. There was a horse in the race, which another front runner which has been pulled out, I forget the name of now, but it was from Mullins Yard, and it would have challenged Untitled Chapter for the lead, and that wouldn't have helped its performance. But it's been pulled out now, so Untitled Chapter will probably get its own way in front, but I'm sure the jockeys of Edward Stone and Energumene will not allow it so much rope in front, and they'll be watching it and they'll be ready to pounce. So Edward Stone for me. The next race, it's a Glenfarclas Chase, a cross-country chase, over 3 3/4 mile. Not every type of horse goes for this unique course and the style of jumps what's in this. Some take with, some don't. Galvin hasn't, from the Gordon Elliott yard, it's had some runs over this, but not in a competitive race. But it has certainly, I've heard, it's had a look at these jumps and it's had a go over them. But that's been more schooling than in a race itself. It has been back down the betting lately. It did run a backer for the Gold Cup last year, and it ran 4th, I think it was. It ran a big race. So for a Gold Cup horse to be in a race like this, it's expected that it'll run a big race. But more importantly to me, the favourite from the same yard, Delta Work, it took it really well last year. It spoilt all the fairy tales by beating Tiger Roll from the same yard. Tiger Roll was going to go out on a win in this race, but Delta Work spoilt the party. But it proved it's a quality horse, and it proved it took really well to this unique course with these style of jumps. It's 5-4 favourite, but some will back Garden to beat it, but I'll not be one of them. I'll stick with Delta Work. As far as anything, a bigger price taking it on, Back in the Lash is a horse which ran quite well in these style races at 18-1, if somebody wanted to back it each way. But for me personally, another one would be Snow Leopardess at 25-1. What the saying seems to have schooled well on this type of jump. Personally, I kind of go past the favourite, Delta Work, and although it's a short price, that's the only one I could take really. The next race, the Johnny Henderson Grand Annual Handicap, chase over 2 mile. The horse I think it's got a decent chance in this race is Dino Blue. It's a horse what was entered in different races. It was entered in a better class race than this, but they've decided to go for this 2 mile handicap. I think it's quite well handicapped looking at its mark. It's a race I haven't given a lot of time to. I find it difficult race to weigh up, but it's at about 5 or 6-1. I think Dino Blue, you'll definitely get a big run for your money with that one. The last race on the card, the 5:30, the bumper race, National Hunt Flat Race. The favourites have topsy-turved between different ones over the last few months. Mullins does really well in the race. He's always got plenty of horses in. He has again this time. The top 10 the betting. You can. It's hard to count some of these horses out, to be honest, because these type of horses can improve from one run to the next. The one, if I had to name 1 or 2 in the race, a horse I've took Anti-Post, and it's a horse what's really bred to be a chaser. So you would think in this National Hunt Flat Race over 2 mile that it wouldn't have the speed, but it's been getting back in the betting. It's run well so far in National Hunt Flat Races. It's Factor Fail. It's down to about 6-1 third favourite now. Been plenty of support for it. It will certainly be finishing this 2 miles really well up the hill. Stamina will be no issue for it, and I'm expecting a big run from that. I couldn't put people off a number of horses in the race what's all done well. The favourite, A Dream to Share. The second favourite, It's For Me at 5-1. Fun from the Mullins Yard. It's run well, it's improving. Chapeau du Soleil from the Mullins Yard was once over favourite for this race. I've got a little bit on it. It's at a decent price, but it's drifted in the market over the last 4 to 6 weeks with other Mullins' horses coming out and performing better. And Chapeau du Soleil looks as if it's stalled a little bit compared to some of the other Mullins horses. I hope it runs a big race, but I think Factor Fail is the one out of the 2 I've backed or expect to run the better race. So that's the one for me. But I wouldn't put anybody off any of them horses I've mentioned up in the betting. My nap of the second day would be in the last race, the bumper race, the National Hunt Flat Race, would be Factor Fail at about 6-1. Right, now on to the third day, the Thursday, and we'll start with the first race. It's a Turner's Novice Chase. The horse I like in this race is once again, unfortunately, the favourite, but it's a horse what will take a world of beating. The only question mark again is it jumps well and it runs well over the distance, over this 2.5 mile distance. It's got a lot of things going for it. Improving horse. The only one question mark would be that it ran last season at Cheltenham and it ran disappointing. People just say it was one of them things and they didn't put it down to being that it didn't like the track. At 5-4 favourite, you've got to be pretty certain that that's the case before you back it. But Mighty Potter, for me, would be one of the bankers of the meeting. And I can't really oppose it. Banbridge, the horse what's second favourite. It's run some decent races over 2 mile. They've stepped it up to 2.5 mile. It'll certainly stay the 2.5 mile. It hasn't done much wrong. But I don't think it'll be quite good enough to beat the favourite Mighty Potter. Appreciated from the Mullins Yard, the third favourite. There's been quite a bit of money for this horse coming lately in the race. It's won at Cheltenham before. It's done well in national and flat race. It's done well in the hurdle races. It's now in a chase. It's expected to run a big race, but again, I don't think it'd be quite good enough to beat Mighty Potter. I think from the list of horses in the race, I think that's the ones I would concentrate on, the ones at the head of the market in that race. But it's Mighty Potter for me. The next race, the Pertemps Handicap Hurdle over 3 mile. The horse I like in this race, I mean, Thanks for Help's the favourite, 5-1. Maxim's the second favourite, 7-1. Now Maxim, 2 runs ago, ran a cracking race and it was favourite for this race. Its next race, its last run it had, didn't do so well, but it had quite a few excuses. It didn't get the run of the race. It didn't get a smooth passage. So people who want to forgive it for that, which I can understand why they would, it's 7-1 second favourite. It's entitled to run a big race. The horse I'm going for is Henderson's horse, Walker Nair. He's talked about this horse the last couple of seasons. Is a horse he's always thought was a quality horse. It's found a bit of form lately. It stays well. And I think at 8-1, I think it's a good each way bet. That'll do for me in this race. It's a competitive race, but I think Walking on Air, it'll be a good each way bet at round 8-1. The next race, the Ryanair Chase, over almost 2 3/4 mile. The favourite in this race, Shishin, from the Nicky Henderson yard. It was run in the top 2 mile chases. But the back end of last season and the beginning of this season, it's somewhat lost its way. It hasn't performed. It's run disappointingly. It was proven over 2 mile, but the trainer argues, and quite rightly I think so, that it's crying out for a longer distance. He stepped it up last time and it ran a marvellous race. Stepped up to 2.5 mile. He could have even stepped it up again and put it in the Gold Cup. He did enter it for the Gold Cup, but that would be a massive challenge for the horse to move to the fast 2 mile races have been running in, then to step it up to 2.5, win one race and then to step it up to 3 1/4 mile in one go. That might have been just too much of an ask. So I think he's done the right thing. He's run it over just over 2.5 mile, and it's at the head of the market. It's round about the even money mark. In fact, it might be a shade odds on now. If it repeats what it did last time and it runs to the same form, it'll not get beat. Short price, but I couldn't possibly take it on with anything. Blue Lord is the one I backed anti-post for the race. It ran over 2 mile. It got away with it once, but the last time it ran over 2 mile, it was disappointing. It looked a bit outpaced, and they had to do something different and put it over 2.5 mile. I think it's proved it can stay 2.5 mile. I don't think that's an issue. I hope it runs a big race because I've took it anti-post, but with hindsight, watching the race Shishkin ran last time, when it was stepped up to 2.5 mile, it repeats its performance of last time. I can't see anything beating it. So although I'm on Blue Lord, I expect Shishkin to win the race. Janadale, which is about the 4th favourite, it showed an improved performance last time, and it wasn't much support for it in the betting market, and it was expected that it would need to run. So that was a good performance with a horse what was expected to need to run. So as far as each way, Janadale will certainly run a fair race for its price of about 7 to 1 each way. The next race, the Paddy Power Steers Hurdle over 3 mile. This is a cracking race, a race I really enjoy. I follow the steering hurdles closely. I monitor these all the time. If I was honest, I've backed a number of these in the race anti-post at bigger prices, and it's a race where it wouldn't be a shock if any of them won. The horse I'm wanting to win the race is the slight favourite now, Blazing Cal. I've got it in a number of bets, so that's the one which I'll be wanting to come in for me. It's had injury problems over the seasons. It hasn't ran much. It's had one problem and another. Twice in the last few weeks it's been 50-50 would it run, and they said it got through that, and then even the back end of last week it was said to be 50-50 again, would it run again, with another problem. So it's got massive ability. The races it has run, when it hasn't been injured, it's performed really well. It's a class horse, and I'm expecting a big run from it. Touch wood, the horse is fitting well for the race. The second favourite, Tehipo, from a top yard, Gordon Elliott's yard. It burst the bubble of honeysuckle when it was stepped up in distance last time, over 2.5 mile. It wasn't last year's champion hurdle and expected to run well over 2 mile, but it was outpaced late on. It showed improved form this season, especially when stepped up in distance. It's been stepped up again to 3 mile now. The trainer thinks it'll steer well over the 3 mile trip. It wants the ground soft or even on the heavy side, so the ground's come right for it, because it is starting, the meeting is starting off with soft going, more rain expected. If it was to change to heavy, I think I would have to change my mind from Blazing Cal onto Tehipo as far as what I would tip in the race. But if the ground stays soft or good to soft, Blazing Cal will be the one for me. The next one in the market, Flooring Porter, has won the last 2 years run of this race. It's going for the hat-trick. It generally starts off the season a bit sticky and then improves as the season goes on, but this season it's run a little bit poorer and its participation was in doubt. It wasn't running to the same level, and it's been another doubtful run late on, but the trainer says he's got it right now. It's won the last 2 renewals, so it's another one I backed at a big price anti-post. and it'll run a fair race. Next one, the betting, which for long enough was favourite for the race, Home by the Lee. Not quite sure why it's drifted in the betting really, Home by the Lee. It's improved from last season. Last season it ran the race, I think it was about 4th or 5th in the race. It's a better horse this season. It may well be because it's ridden in a different way. That could have helped it, but it's certainly improved from last season. It's another one I've took anti-post because I've backed a number of them at bigger prices, not bigger prices. I couldn't put anybody off backing it. It'll run a big race. Next one to betting, Classical Dream. It's a horse what's had numerous injury problems and it's a very fragile horse. It's had its chance before over this distance. It's not for me. Next one to betting, Gold Tweet. It came across from France and ran a big 3 mile staying race on its first run in England, and it won the race. It ran a stormer of a race. It wasn't even entered for this race, but after that last race the trainer supplemented it. He's paid a fee to get it into this race later on. It's 12 to 1. I wouldn't put people off backing it each way if they want to do. It's not my choice, but it'll run a big race. The last one I'll mention in a wide open race is one of my favourites and a lot of people's favourites, Paisley Park. It's a horse it's won this race before. It has a tendency to run its race where it gets outpaced halfway through the race, like a lot of top staying hurdlers do, and stays on really well to the line. And that's done it really well over the last few seasons. Problem this season is it's a bit long in the tooth now. It's about 10 or 11 year old. It can't go on forever. But this season, its first couple of runs, it showed improved performance. It ran 2 really great races. It's only its last run where it was a bit disappointing. But its last run, it done something I've never seen it do before, which was, it was up with the pace. And it looked to be going really well, but late on, it didn't have that finishing burst. So I can only assume from that the last race it ran, they didn't run fast enough for it in front. And that's why it was in contention throughout the race, where normally it'd be dropped out the back and you think it'll never win from there, and it stays on late on after going through a flat spot and staying on well. That didn't happen last time. But because it ran 2 races earlier on in the season which showed its form was still there even at the age it is now, it's 14 to 1, and yes, it's of an age where you would think it would start and come unstuck a little bit, but I still think it'll run a mighty race. And I've even got a little bit on it for nostalgia. And if you discount its last race when the race wasn't run to suit, you certainly couldn't count it out of being an each way bet as well. Right, the next race, the 410 at Cheltenham, Wagner's Plate handicap chase, over 2 3/4 mile. It's a race where I struggle to find what's going to win this. I'll give you a couple for people who want to have a bet each way, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through the form. It's not a race I've given a lot of thought to. I find it too tricky, to be honest. The favourites, so Scottish, 7 to 2, well fancied horse. It's got every reason to be favourite, but I'll be looking for bigger prices in the race. I'll give a couple what I think it's got a decent chance each way. The first one would be Ferrero Bamboo from the Venetia Williams yard. Her horses generally like the softer ground. I think there's improvement to come from this horse, about 10 to 1. The next horse in the race I would say would be Seddon. at 20 to 1. And I think both them horses, for a place, will run a fair race for you each way. First one at 10 to 1, the second one at 20 to 1. For somebody who wants a bet in the race. Next race, the 450, the Jack de Bromhead Mares Novice Hurdle, over 2 mile 1. The Nicky Henderson trained horse, the favourite, Lucia I should say. It's improved every race it's ran. It hasn't been beaten. And it's a horse I've backed anti-post as well. It's shortened in price. It's 7 to 4 favourite now. I cannot desert it now. It'll run a massive race. It'll take all the beating. There's horses I can mention if people wanted to back something at a bigger price each way. A couple to pick out the race if they want an each way bet would be Lot of Joy at 13 to 2, Magical Zoo at 14 to 1. But personally, I'll be on the favourite, Lucia. The Kim Muir Challenge Cup for amateur riders. It's been a lot of money for the favourite. It's not a short price for you, it's 4 to 1 in a wide open race. Stumptown. I'll be backing a couple of horses in the race. I'll be on Stumptown at 4 to 1. And I'll also be backing an each way 1, and that'll probably be Beauport at 11 to 1. Stumptown to win, I've got a wager on, and I'll be backing Beauport each way. So that concludes the third day of Cheltenham. Right, on for the final day, day 4, Cheltenham Gold Cup day. And we'll start with the first race, the JCB Triumph Hurdle, just over 2 mile. The favourite in here, Blood Destiny, from Mullins Yard, has been well touted by the stable. It's been well backed in to 7 to 4 joint favourite with Lucy Mouse, who's also from the stable. Blood Destiny's been improving as it went along, and obviously think there's a lot more to come from it. Lucy Mouse was unbeaten till its last run, where the trainer Mullins got stuck into the jockey and said the jockey rode a poor race on the horse. The horse still come through to finish second, I believe. It was unlucky, but the horse what beat it is the third favourite, Garland Marceau, who's 4 to 1, and it didn't look to be any fluke. Garland Marceau came through well, stayed on well, and it'll also be improving. It didn't have an ideal race itself. So there's a bit of an argument at twice the price that Garland Marceau might actually beat Lucy Mouse again. But I think the one I'll be taking in the race would be Blood Destiny. There's that much confidence behind this horse from the stable, and it's been improving as it's went along. The 7 to 4 joint favourite, I think that would be the one for me, Blood Destiny. The next race, the 210 at Cheltenham, the handicap hurdle, just over 2 mile. The favourite in that race is Filey Bay. It was well backed Irish horse, running an English race last time in a top race, and it looked all over the winner. It came late, but it couldn't get the better of the strong front runner Auchenrisk, who stuck its neck out to win. Filey Bay made a lot of ground up that day, still well handicapped, and it deserves to be favourite. The second favourite, Charger, is normally run in a champion hurdle. It's run the last couple of years and it's been second or third. It's always been placed in a champion hurdle, ran some good races. This year it's looked a little bit as if it wasn't quite the same horse, it's another year older, and they've dropped it into a handicap, I think, for the first time. It's got a big weight on its back. I think it's top weight, or around about top weight, but likes Cheltenham. and in a handicap for the first time, it's sure to run a decent race even with that welterweight on its back. Third favourite, Hunter's Yarn. Progressive horse, very well thought of, sure to be thereabouts. That's one of the two out taking the race each way at 8 to 1, Hunter's Yarn. The next one in the betting, Pembroke. A horse what hasn't done much wrong this season, will like the ground, softened ground. Well touted from the stable as well. They expect a big run from it, and that will be the other one I'll take each way in the race at 9 to 1. That's Hunter's Yarn at 8 to 1 and Pembroke 9 to 1. I'll take them against the field, 2 each way bets. The next race, the Albert Bartlett Novice Hurdle, over 3 mile. A real stayers race this. 3-card Bragg has been stepped up in distance. They've always said they thought it was a stay in the making, and you should see progression from it. Now stepped up to 3 mile. It's 7 to 2 favourite, and the stable's confident the extra distance will see the best of it. Corbett's Cross has changed hands for quite a bit of money from a big owner. He's bought this horse after running a good race last time out, and he's expecting a lot from it in this race. That's Corbett's Cross, second favourite, 4 to 1. Embassy Gardens, not long ago was a favourite for the race after it ran a good race last time out, but other horses have now headed in the market. I think from the ones I've mentioned, it's a fairly open race, but I would take a chance that stepped up in distance, 3-card Bragg, always thought to be, would stay well, that it'll see this through at 7 to 2. The next race, the Cheltenham Gold Cup, a marvellous race this year. The Galopin Des Champs, brilliant jumper. Last year it was unlucky to fall, went clear at the last, and it more or less, it just knuckled on landing, very unlucky. It would have won a race at Cheltenham last year very easy. It's ran this year, and it showed that it's settled a lot better. Last year it was a bit too brave for its own good, jumping really high and exuberant at the jumps. This year it's jumping a bit cleaner, not as high in the air. It's settling a better, it was a bit of a tearaway last year. People doubt will it stay the 3 1/4 mile. The trainer doesn't seem to have any doubts, and other people from the yard who speak about the horse, they don't have doubts it's going to stay. But at 7 to 4, it's whether you're willing to take that chance or not. Second favourite, Brave Man's Game. It won the King George this year, very impressive. Took a wide course, a lot of doubt would it stay, but 3 mile in the King George at Kempton is a lot different to 3 1/4 mile at Cheltenham. The undulating track at Cheltenham means an uphill finish, means it's a lot harder to get home, and obviously an extra 1/4 mile there. But Brave Man's Game was impressive in the King George. Nichols, the trainer, he's confident it'll stay, but again, it's whether you want to take that chance. Kempton's a flat, faster track than this, so it hasn't actually shown that it'll stay a stiff 3 mile 2 furlong. Aprutard, 8 to 1. This is a horse I was very impressed with last year, won very easy the Gold Cup. Came out this year, in its first race, it just wasn't the same horse for whatever reason. I think they found bits and pieces wrong with it. It pulled up. It looked like a different horse altogether. I did back this one anti-post at half the price it is now, because I was sure it would improve and get backed in. It's only ran one race and it pulled up. The next time it was going to run to get a race into it, it had a knock on a joint. He had to pull it out. So Henry de Bromhead's fetching this horse here, a horse what hasn't had a run. So for a big race like this, a Gold Cup, to pull this off would be a master stroke. I have backed it anti-post, but it's up against it, to be honest. Noble Yeats, the Grand National winner, is 4th favourite 9-1. It won the Grand National last year, so it shows it's tons of stamina, stays well, jumps well. Some of these might be a little bit speedier for it. If the ground continues to get heavier, I mean it's soft on the first day, if that rain continues and this was to turn into soft to heavy ground or heavy ground, that will certainly fetch it more into play as it stays beyond this 3¼ mile, as it proved in the National. It also won the American National. No, sorry, I'm getting muddled up with another horse here. It didn't win the American National, that's a different horse. But Noble Yeats won the English National last year, and it stays very well. The same can be said for the next one, Statler. It could be tapped a bit for tour, it could be outpaced a little bit, but it'll certainly, at 10-1, be staying on at the end of the race. Again, if it turns into a slog, that's when the likes of Noble Yeats and Statler will come into their own. If the ground changes to good to soft, or just soft, and it's not such a slog, then you'll get the likes of Applutard and Galopin de Champs. They'll show up a lot better in the race. Another mudlark, which would prefer plenty rain, is the 3rd in the Gold Cup last year, Skelton's horse, Protectorate. It ran disappointing last time. It ran a good race before that, the race before, but last time it was a bit disappointing. The trainer said he thought it more or less, in as many words, it would have picked up that race without being 100%, with it being about 80-90%. That didn't prove the case, so it's drifted out in price a bit. But if the going turns soft to heavy, you couldn't count it out either. Next one, Ahoy Seigneur. It's a really good horse, but doesn't run 2 races alike. I've caught it a couple of times when it's been right, but it's not easy to catch it when it's right. It's apt to make mistakes as it goes round. It's apt to, if it goes too hard up in front, it sometimes wants to be at the front, and if it goes too hard, and then it doesn't see its race it out. It's trained by Lucinda Russell. It's a one I've backed anti-post at big prices, and I'm hoping, more than thinking, it'll win this race. Manila Indo, 20-1 shot, won this 2 years ago. It's ran once this season and it didn't run a bad race, but it's getting on now a bit for this race to be at the age it is to be winning this race. And a previous winner, what then goes on to lose, it's rare for a horse to come back and win again. The next one, Sounds Russian, is trained in Yorkshire by Jefferson. This horse has done nothing but improve. It's a lovely horse. It runs its heart out every time. Last time it possibly jumped that well. It hit the front earlier than it wanted to, what would have been ideal for it. And I think 20-1, it's worth backing that. You get a good run for your money backing that each way. So I think I've mentioned quite a few in the race. I mean, the next one down, Hewick, that's the one that won the American National. And the trainers went to press and said a number of times, this horse will run a big race, a massive price. But the one thing he's also said, it needs good ground. And this ground isn't going to be good ground. So it may well even be pulled out the race. But if it was to run, it wouldn't be its ideal conditions. And the only way I could see it being placed is if it had really good ground, which it ain't going to get here. A massive outsider, Royal Pagal. If the ground really went heavy, it's 50-1. It wouldn't be an impossible task for even it to get into the first 4. If the ground was heavy, I wouldn't back it. Venetia Williams' horse, which it would show a lot better run and heavy and you would get other horses what would disappoint if the ground turned too heavy, so it would fetch it into the race for a place. But the 2 out back each way would be Sounds Russian at 20 to 1, and Absolute Tard, hoping that the Bromhead can pull a master stroke, fetch it back to form without a run this season. The next race, the Hunter Chase race, it's not a race I bother with much, the Hunter Chases. The favourite's Vassey. It's been unlucky in the past when it should have won and things haven't worked its way. It's a young horse, it's improving. It's 94 favourite, and there's a lot of better experts than me on Hunter Chases think it'll take some beating. The one I've took in the race, and I've only put a small wager on, is Billaway. It's back at 9 to 1, it's 7 to 1 now. It's getting a bit long in the tooth as well. It won the race last year. I think the year before, I think it was placed. It's one of these horses what's got to be kept up with its work all the way through, a hard ride for the jockey, but stays on well at the end. It would have to run out of its skin to win this, but because it's been second in a race before and won it last year, it's a horse, it's 7 to 1, it's worth an each way bet in the race. That's Billaway. The next race, the Paddy Power Mares Chase, the favourite Allegorie De Vassey. This horse, 6 to 4 favourite, it's got a hell of an engine, but it's got a tendency not to run in a straight line. It veers out. I think it veers out to the right. Run on a left-handed track, not ideal. It's a bit of a sketchy jumper at times. It's not a marvellous jumper, but it's got a marvellous engine. It's a horse, what if it doesn't hit too many and doesn't run off course too much out, off a straight line, it's going to take the world of beating. Impervious, the second favourite, will certainly give it a run for its money. It's done nothing but run well the runs it's had this season. It's sure to run a big race. The other one, Jeremy's Flame, it's 5 to 1. It'll be thereabouts. But I think for me nap of the meeting, I'll take the chance that Allegorie De Vassey, when it gets its act together and everything goes right, it's got the engine to beat these. So that would be my nap for the final day, Allegorie De Vassey. The last race of the meeting, the Martin Pipe Conditional Handicap Hurdle. This is normally a wide open race with a lot can be given a chance. It's the last race, so I'll be taking a couple each way in this. Cool Survivor 7 to 1, and I'll pick another one in the race. Irish Hill at 16 to 1. So I think them two, I'll have a small wager on them each way, and hope I finish on a good note in the last race. Anyway, I hope you have all enjoyed this third edition of Postie's Pointers. I hope you have a bit of luck and you get a bit of enjoyment out of this podcast I've put together. But remember, gambling's fun, don't go mad, and enjoy yourselves. And just before I go, I just want to mention a special mention to my son Peter, who goes to the bother of editing this podcast for us, so I can put this out to my friends and anybody else who wants to see it. And he puts a little bit of time into that, and I appreciate what he's done. So well done, Peter. Anyway, bye and good punting for 2023.